Hi, welcome back to another video of Learning C++ journey. So from the past videos, we have been learning about classes. Okay, so we have touched different topics related to the classes in order to understand the classes better, because the classes will be used throughout our OOP programming, as well as it is very useful as well in DSA. Okay, so it is very good to understand the concept of classes and its related some concepts, to understand them and to exercise them as well. Okay, so just to learn classes more, today we are going to learn about functions within the class, outside the class, and simple functions as well. So we will learn about member functions as well as simple functions. So let's start with the member functions. Okay, so we have our test class here, and let's start with declaring some member variables within our private section. So we will say private, and we will have a private section with two member variables like float, length, let's say length, and another one will be float width. Okay, so these are two member variables. Now in order to declare some values and in order to assign some values to these member variables, we can use functions. Okay, so we can use getters and setters as well as constructors and as well some functions as well. So in this video we will use simple functions to assign values to these member variables. So first rule is to put that function within your public section. Okay, now we will design a function with a non-returning type. The reason for void return type is that we are going to return nothing, because we are just initializing our member variables with some values. Okay, so we will say void get input. We will call it as get input, and within our get input, what we can do is that we can write cout enter length. Okay, and then we can do cin length. Okay, and then after that cout we will have enter width, and then we will have cin width as well. Okay, so what this function will do, that it will take input from the user and store it within our these private members. Okay, after that we will have another function by the name of area. Okay, so let's have area. What will be the purpose of this area? It will return the multiplication of these two. So it will be like width times length. Okay, so length, and we will have a float return data type. The reason for it is that we are returning something. Okay, now first of all, let's declare something. Okay, let me tell you something else, that we can have object declaration here as well in this syntax. So you can declare an object here as well. Let's work with this declaration in this video. Okay, so object one dot get input. The first thing that we are going to do is to take input. Then we will have object one dot area. Okay, it will calculate area for us, and we will print out the result over here. Okay, now let's run our program. Okay, what do we have? Okay, in semicolon missing. Now let's run again. Okay, so enter the length. Let's enter 3.3, and then we will enter 8.7. So we are getting some output value that is 28.71, and I hope it is going to be correct. Okay, so this is how you can define the class functions, like member functions within your class, and they are called inline functions. Now what if you wanted to define your functions outside the class? So you can do that as well. So the syntax for that is a bit changed, and I'll tell you what is the syntax for doing defining the functions outside your class. Okay, and the functionality will remain the same. The syntax will be changed. Okay, let's have a look. The first thing that you have to write if you are defining your functions outside the class, that is going to be the returning data type. But for defining outside the class, you must declare your functions within your class. So I will have float and the name of the function, let's say get input. Okay, so I have get input and I'll just have a semicolon here. Okay, I won't define it. Okay, so float, and we will write it as area, and once again just a semicolon, and here we will have void. Okay, so no return data type. Now outside the class, what we will do, first of all we will write the return data type. So for the first function we have no return data type, so we are using void. After that you will use test, the class name, and then scope resolution operator. The scope resolution operator purpose is to give you access to some of the values. So like if something is out of the scope, let's say if I was writing test here, so simply test couldn't access some values, but if I write test colon colon, what it happens that it gives the scope to these member variables. So these are now within the scope of our test. Okay, so now we have our scope resolution operator. Now after using scope resolution operator, so we have multiple choices. So what we are using here, we are using the get input. So we will write get input, and the further definition will take place here. So we will copy this code and we will just paste it over here. Okay, just to show you that both will functions the same. Okay, now after that we have to define another function with data return type as float, and then test, and then scope resolution operator, then take area. Okay, and we will define this return within our definition of this function. Okay, all right, so I have commented these functions and I have defined my member functions outside the class. So let's run our program. Okay, so let's enter some value. So 3.3 and then 8.7, I guess it was the value. Yes, we are getting the same 28.71 with the definition outside the class. So you can have the definitions of the functions outside the class. So I hope you guys have learned about the syntax for defining the member functions within the class and also outside the class. So it can be useful in some problems or in some cases, but for a general, I'll tell you that when to use the functions definition outside the class. Whenever you have some complex code within your class, or whenever you have multiple functions like 10 plus functions you have in your class, so it's better to define them outside the class, just to maintain the code much better and have less chances of code bloats. Okay, and plus if you have some little functions and they are not that much complex, so you can define them within your class. So I have taught you the syntax for both. Now it's up to your requirement and up to your choice which one you want to choose within your problem solving. Now in this example, we will make use of the setters and getters, with the help of which we can assign values to our length and width member variables. After that, I will show you that how you can use classes as your arguments and as your return data type, and you can perform some functions with it. So I'll just fast forward this code because you guys already know what the getters and setters are and how they are designed. Alright, so we have got two getters. So these getters will be used to access these values and return them. Okay, and these are the setters which will be used to set some values, or we can say assign some values to these private members. Okay, now let's say I want to design a function. I want to design a function, such function that is not a member function, and with the help of which I can receive a class and also return a class. Now until now, when we were dealing with functions, the syntax that we followed is return and then name, then arguments, then after that the definition of the function. So this is going to be the same syntax here as well. So first of all we will write the return data type. So the return data type in this case, that is going to be our test class. So whichever class you are going to deal with, so use that as your return data type. Now here I will write this as the get input. Let's say I write it as get input. Okay, in get input what I will do, I will receive first of all the class. The class is my argument, or I can say I can make a copy of my class. So I will write a temp. Okay, after that I will receive two variables, that is length and another one would be width. Okay, so as you guys can see, this is the same syntax as we are used to, and this is the return data type, this is your receiving arguments. Okay, so now what we will do here is that we will call temp object with, so first of all we will set our length with this length. Okay, now with temp dot set width we will call width. Now the values of width and length are now saved within our temporary objects, and in temporary objects they are now saved with the help of these setters in these member variables float length and float width. Now what I want is that I want to return this object, so I will return this temp. Now in order to receive this temp in my main function, what I will do, I will use the same data type that I use to return. Okay, so the receiving data type will be same as of the returning data type. So here I will do what? I will receive object 1 is equals to, now I will call getter, what is the function name? Get input. So I have get input. Now the first argument that is expecting from me is the class, the test class type. So I will pass this object 1 as my argument first, and then I will pass 2.3 and then some 3.1. Okay, now let's run our program and let's see do we get some error or not. Okay, so we got no errors. Now let's print out our object 1 values in order to see that did we get our assigned values or not as our output. So the main thing is accessing the value. So if you are able to access the values with the help of getters or whatever it is, then you can perform some other operations as well. So that's why I'm just printing them. So with printing you can know the accessing method. Okay, now as you guys can see that we have got 2.3 and 3.1, and they are correctly right. 2.3 is our length and 3.1 is our width, and as you guys can see that we have got our length and width. Now what we learned from this code, what we learned, let me just summarize it for you once again. First of all, we learned that we can have our class as our return data type. Okay, then we learned that we can have our class as our parameter as well. So we learned that as well. Then we learned that within our function we can make some changes to that temporary class, and then we can return it, and then we can receive that class values within our same kind of class object, which is here in this case that is object 1. So this is what we learned, passing the class as our argument and returning the class as well. Now if I tell you that we used to deal with pass by reference as well, so this concept is actually pass by value. Now if I tell you that use pass by reference concept, so here I will write and I will not have any kind of these values. Okay, so I will have this void, and I won't receive these values in my object 1, because right now I am passing the reference of object 1, and I will remove this return temp as well. Now let's have a look and let's see, do we get the same output of 2.3 and 3.1 or not. Let's see. So as you guys can see that we have got the same output as 2.3 and 3.1. So that means that the concepts that we learned previously for our functions and working of functions, they are still valid, and they are similarly valid for our these functions in which we are dealing with classes. So instead of just those return data types, like we used to have integer, we used to have float, we used to have character, we used to have string. Now instead of all these data types, what we can actually receive and return and pass by reference, that is for the classes as well. So the concepts are the same, syntax are the same. The only difference here is that you will use your defined data type name and the variable of your choice, and this is the concept that we have been practicing from the tutorial 1 in the class, that how you can access the values of your object. Now this was the a little bit introduction in an idea based tutorial in which my aim was to get you introduced with the classes within simple functions. So I guess and I hope you guys have got the basic idea that you guys can use classes as well. Just like other data types, you can use your user defined data types and you can perform a lot of useful functions over it. So I'll meet you guys in the next video. In this tutorial, this was it.